Do I have?
You know, of
Oh,
all the things that we could lead off with, that would be the easiest and yet somehow the laziest.
A Star
you want
Wars
to do a
pun?
little hang?
Yes.
Yes. May the fourth be with you.
Hmm.
I don't even
I don't
have
think
my.
we should give them any recognition. Star Wars is crap.
Okay, so
Opinions
our
expressed by Terry may not
Harry's email
necessarily be the
address
opinion.
is
I'm like trying to figure out where my porgs are, and I don't think they're actually over here. Oops.
I'm about to write a series that's set in a Star Wars like universe, so I really don't have any space to complain about that, but I can go ahead and mock it for their failures in movie making over the last 20 years.
go back further.
Yeah,
I still think the 80s is 20 years ago, so, you get what you get.
You and my uncle need to get together.
I was cleaning out a closet this morning, and there was a VHS tape in one of the shelves.
Risky business there, playing that stuff.
It was not risky business. That was not Tom Cruise. It was Dragon Ball Z, one of the movies, and my husband goes, should we keep this? I'm like, we don't have anything to play this on. He's like, oh, so it goes in the trash. I'm like, I would have donated it, but
I think I still have a VCR.
As do I.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all with you.
if we have one, it's probably in the attic, maybe? But what?
What is this sound I'm hearing?
Coffee maker.
Are you diddling yourself in the middle of the show? What is going on back there?
Coffee maker's out of water, and the heating elements have finally fried everything that's in there.
Oh.
I wonder. We should have had a poll here and asked the viewers what they thought it was.
What they thought it was?
Missed an opportunity there.
Yeah, you're right. Did miss an opportunity.
There was a missed opportunity.
I was pretty sure it was your coffee maker, but damn, that was hilarious. You didn't hear what we heard.
No, I'm sure I didn't.
You can listen back later.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, like he ever watches this show or listens to this show.
Look, I've got better use of my time than to watch losers like us.
Point.
Damn. Damn. Oh my God. Anyway, howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Dumbasses of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Paul E. Cooley. Joining me today, Veronica Jigger and Terry Mixon. How the hell are you people? Matt says, well, there were two options and coffee maker wasn't what came to mind. Exactly.
Well, you know.
It sounded like you were spanking the monkey in there. That's the
wow, quickest trip to spank the monkey ever.
I'm gonna let that one go before I start blushing as to why I know that sound. Anyway, so
because you've had to bully it?
Because I've seen several movies. Anyway, how the hell are you? What have you been up to, V?
There's not enough caffeine in the world today, let me tell you. Let's see. This week, we've moved my oldest into his apartment. And he has finally graduated college, so yay. And okay, so here's the fun thing. Technically, he's not completely graduated. He walked and he got his diploma and certificates, but he still has to revise and submit his undergrad thesis to be completely officially graduated.
Got it.
And so that's why we surmise that his advisor was not at graduation, because he wasn't going to be there for the actual, if it wasn't the real walking, then he wasn't going to do it.
Rick says, quick V, change the locks.
Exactly so.
I don't have the executive function today to do that.
As soon as you've got the kids out of the house, the right option is to move without leaving a forwarding address.
Out of state.
No. No, what happens is I'll still have cats, so I really can't do. I have to figure out at least one person to take care of the cats for a bit, and then I just have like 5 back-to-back cruises, and I'll figure out the Wi-Fi. I'll do the show from somewhere on the pool deck. It'll be great. But yeah, got him moved in. I got to meet all of his friends from his on-campus crew. It's hysterical. His friends do not call him by his given name. He has like 3 or 4 nicknames. His friends' parents call him by that other name, which I think is hysterical. So his name's Anthony. Both Paul and Terry have met him at least once. Balticon many, many, many years ago.
I'm not sure that I met him, honestly. I don't think I have.
Okay. And now this little round, chubby little round faced kid is now this like 6'1" scruffy looking lumberjack, who will help you find something at Home Depot and tell you exactly where all the store cats are, because
that's important knowledge.
He comes home to visit the cats. I mean, this is his thing. But all of his friends call him Antoine.
Okay.
Because Antoine. And they all, like, his friends' parents assume that's his real name because of the French last name. I'm like, no. Yeah.
You should be like in the movie Oscar, where they called him Little Anthony.
Little Anthony.
Just like that, Little Anthony.
I had friends who did, when he was younger, did call him Anthony. So yeah, but he's all graduated and moved in and working full time and no student loans because scholarships. So
he's set up well for life. Good for him.
He is the smartest dumb jock you will ever meet. I'm not joking. I went and cleared out some of his books from like all of his classes that were in the closet. And he has a business degree, but he went to a liberal arts school, and he did a bunch of like European history, AP history, all this. So I've got like the Age of Enlightenment and the Cliff Notes for the Age of Enlightenment and all of these, the Communist Manifesto, all annotated, and all of this stuff that he used for these classes. And I'm like, I'm not sure how that's going to come in handy when you're supervising the lumber department at Home Depot, but you're going to have some really, really interesting conversations with contractors if that ever comes up.
Well, so it'll stand him in good stead when he gets a little higher in the chain.
True. And that is what he wants to do. So yeah. But that's been my week and recording, and yeah. I've been trying to be a responsible parent and kind of succeeding.
Good on you.
Yay. What about you, Terry? Have you taken over the world yet?
I have not taken over the world, but I've had my insides crunched around.
That sounds horribly painful, and I hope it didn't involve like an alien face hugger or something.
That's not exactly so far off, really, when you get right down to it. My wife and I went to a restaurant, and had prime rib to celebrate something. And we bought the biggest size because it was only a couple of bucks more to get to the 16-ounce prime rib. So we only had a little bit of it while we were there, and brought back 2 basically whole prime ribs. And over the next 2 days, we went ahead and cooked those, reheated those up, had them with mashed potatoes, split them in half. And so 2 days of 8-ounce steak dinners with whatever. And all of that kind of bunched up in my intestines and crunched my liver against my ribs and made everything really hard to deal with for 24 hours while it was working its way past that. And then I felt like I'd been kicked in the side because everything was bruised for 2 days. I'm only just now back to being able to sleep how I want.
So then you blasted
welcome to growing old.
You blasted out a box of Snicker bars, and now you're okay?
Well, it looked more like, the old style World War II pineapple grenade, but if that's the way you want to go, sure.
Okay.
Mr. Tiny Bowl, come in.
I did leave a sign on the toilet and said, "Don't flush. Getting a picture for Guinness Book of World Records."
Have you
Okay,
seen that South Park?
I actually did not.
Have you seen that South Park episode?
I have not.
You have to see that. It's how they explain that, how Bono can do all these great things, but is still just a piece of shit. You have to go watch it. It's just amazing. Fucking amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear that is past you now.
Well, it was my own personal dystopia.
Was it?
I take issue with that definition.
Why?
We'll get to the real definition in a minute. So anything else going on, Terry?
The book that I finished its editing process and is now being formatted. It'll be out sooner or later. I'm not sure when. Probably another week from now, at a guess. Maybe 2. I'm not really sure. Sometime in a week or 2, the next book will come out. I don't think it's tomorrow. It's probably a week from tomorrow.
I hate you. Fucking hate you. I got all these books
It's easy
up.
to do. With these kind of looks, it happens a lot.
So nice to be a kept man. So nice to be a kept man. My God.
Unfortunately, I've written 2.5 chapters of the new book because with running around trying to pick up, see the eclipse, go pick up clothes and stuff from Alabama for my daughter-in-law. All of these things and then not feeling well this week, have impacted my writing schedule. So all the time I hoped I would build up, I have not built up. So here we are. And once again, those first few chapters are really hard to get going.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
I can't even go into everything. There's so many fucking things that's going on right now. But the second biggest disruption to my productivity was that due to supply problems, 2 of my medications were unrefillable for a couple of days. And so I'm just now getting back into the swing of things with those meds. And then I had to deal with the week from hell on top of it. So, but I managed to eke out some words. I didn't like them. I think I got a good idea for this scene and character and everything else, but I haven't doubled down on it. We'll see if that happens. So trying to get back into the swing of things, imagine that. But I think things will be better. God, I should not have said that.
You shouldn't have gone there.
I'm going to get a phone call at 2 a.m. That's how this is going to work.
If only we had a great dystopia going, they would have drugs to keep the masses in line, and you could just coast through life.
I'm already coasting through life. What are you talking about? I'm a writer.
But you're careening. You're
careening. You're not coasting.
It's like, unicycle on the top of a really steep slope, and your arms out, and you're screaming, "Wee! Oh shit! Wee! Oh my god!" And I think that's about. Or maybe on rollerblades.
I think Paul is the equivalent of the guy in the Darth Vader mask on a unicycle wearing a kilt, blowing a bagpipe that's shooting flames.
I wish I was that talented. Holy shit, could I make money? Holy shit.
That's his life right there.
Oh my God. I would have so much fun setting people on fire and getting paid for it. That's just awesome. I love it.
It's not wrong. That would be fun.
What is a dystopia, Terry?
Paul's life.
What is a dystopia, Veronica?
Let's see. A dystopia is, according, yes, Mad Max unicycle Paul is best Paul. But according to Wikipedia, a dystopia is a community or society that is extremely bad or frightening. It is often treated as an antonym of utopia, a term that was coined by Sir Thomas More and figures as the title of his best-known work. So essentially, and it comes from the ancient Greek, literally translated, it means bad place. So the Greeks weren't that highfalutin.
Oh, yes, they were. Oh,
No, they weren't.
yes, they were.
Just because you speak in a funny accent doesn't mean that you're better than anybody else.
Yes, but they wore the fancy dresses.
Bed sheets and safety pins. Artfully draped bed sheets and safety pins. But yeah, so dystopia. It's just it's the antithesis of your happy place.
I got to come back to the Greek thing again because they've said things that have stayed around for millennia, and it's critical to remember that
That's just PR. That's PR.
it's critical to remember that anyone that can sit there and go, I drank what, and it still be there 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years later. That's important stuff.
Yes, but it's not just beer. That's also tea.
No. That was the guy that poisoned himself, Socrates. I drank what?
Oh, that.
Excuse me, it's pronounced Socrates. Where the hell have you been?
Oh, sorry. I was making a Socrates
was
joke and it
supposed
just
to
went
rules.
right over her head. Oh, man.
I was thinking of the immortal words of Socrates, who said, I drank what?
Exactly so.
Yeah.
Real genius. Great movie.
Oh gosh.
I don't know if that movie still holds up.
There are a lot of movies that do not hold up anymore.
Oh my God. All right. Now we've defined a dystopia according to the technical definition.
Right. Oh, hang on. I opened the link. So there's some more stuff here.
There's more.
But wait, there's more. Dystopias are often characterized by fear or distress, tyrannical governments, environmental disaster, or other characteristics associated with a cataclysmic decline in society. Themes include complete control over the people in a society through the usage of propaganda, heavy censoring of information or denial of free thought, worshipping an unattainable goal, the complete loss of individuality, and heavy enforcement of conformity. Oh shit, I'm in Florida.
One person's utopia is another person's dystopia.
You almost made me spew coffee, V.
Right.
You could say the same thing about places in California. You could say the same thing about many places around the world, unfortunately.
Yes.
Texas.
But it's subjective because one person's dystopia is another person's utopia. I mean, if you want a great example, and I apologize for breaking one of the rules of the internet, Godwin's rule. I believe that's what it is. But Man in the High Castle.
Mm-hmm.
Great example of where you have one group's utopia is another group's fucking batshit insane dystopia.
Sure.
Because Nazis. So that's Godwin's law. But
it's interesting because we've seen the word thrown around a lot in the last 8-10 years. It's thrown around a lot without context or without really respecting the meaning in a lot of cases. What's really interesting about this is, and the Wikipedia article makes the distinction between the dystopia and apocalyptic fiction, for instance, because the world may not have been destroyed. It's just something has fundamentally changed in the culture, one way or another. And I think that's where the difference lies. Is a significant change in culture, which is unrecognizable to today's culture, or is an anathema to today's culture, and therefore it feels foreign, strange, and threatening. And of course, you have the other thing, which is, hey, we're on the road to this, right? Here are the dominoes. We're watching them fall one by one by one by one. So, and that's how I think about it, is a change in the culture. Now, whether that change is technology, pharmaceuticals, medical care, whatever it is that causes the problem, it causes a problem, which is a fundamental shift. So that's how I think about the dystopias. And they don't have to have a tyrannical government. They often do, but they don't have to. That's the popular one. But there's other things that go on there, which is the society itself is tyrannical.
Yes. If you've got like your protagonist versus the environment, and the environment is absolutely abysmal, then yeah, that is a type of dystopia. Um, if you've, I mean, just what was that book? I think it's
Which
Z
one?
for Zachariah. I'm gonna check it. Um, but it's one of the earliest for me. It was one of the earliest books that I remember reading. That was post-apocalyptic novel. Okay, um, because I remember reading it in middle school, I think. Um, but it was it's an when was it published? It's an older book. I think it's actually to the point where it may have been eligible for public domain if it didn't get picked up. So,
While you're looking for that, I read a dystopian book when I was in middle school, I think it was, that I absolutely cannot remember the name of it or much about it at all. The only part that I remember about it is the person having to smash his golf clubs against a lock to get the mercury out of one of the golf clubs because that was what was required to open the lock to get him out of the dystopian environment. So I have very little chance of ever finding that dystopian novel again or figuring out what it was. But it's amazing what little weird details stick to you out of these
yeah,
stories.
Oh, I remember my first dystopia.
1974.
Oh, okay. That's really not that long ago, and yet it's 50 fucking years.
I know. I know.
um,
God bless.
I think my first dystopia that I remember clearly is 2112 by Rush. The
The
music.
album?
Yep.
Okay.
The song 2112 is broken up into 7 parts. I think that's the first dystopia that I was really aware of because I was listening to the album at 7 or 8.
Okay.
So that was one of those things that kind of marked me. And then, of course, another early memory is Logan's Run when it came out because I saw that in the theater.
That's a very good example of a dystopia.
So those two have been on my mind a lot over the years because I really enjoyed the hell out of both of them. Yes, that was based on an Ayn Rand book called Anthem. It's a novella, and I've read that one as well.
One of the things that I
So
like about, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
now go ahead.
One of the things I like about Logan's Run, the movie, which is different than the book, is the fact that from the inside, it looked like a utopia.
Mm-hmm.
To the people that were living the life of plenty and basically having whatever they wanted to, doing whatever they wanted to, everything was fine and good until you hit 30. Once 30 hit, religion said you had to go to last day and you'd go on to something much better. And even the protagonist didn't think there was anything wrong with the society until his life got changed and his world got turned upside down and all of the grimy undersides of it came to light.
Like the black market, like all the underground stuff that was going on, like the
Like
robot.
the stations that were manned by feral kids that the
Right.
Sandman had to go to and clean out on occasion to find a runner that was a child that had escaped from their society.
So in those particular cases, they are uncannily similar
Mm-hmm.
to what in the case of Logan's Run, for instance, the utopia was modeled basically on what I would consider 70s or 60s idea of what a utopia would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because every portion of it is like that. And then they interject this one thing that is just so alien for so many reasons that it just breaks everything down. And that's where we find this. So even though he doesn't realize it's a dystopia, we do once we know exactly what the rules are. The character has no clue. They're just living. And I think that's what makes it a really interesting dystopia is because the typical angst doesn't come in until it becomes spiritual and until it becomes existential.
It's a lot different than oh God, what is the dystopia that they had out there with the woman with the bow? I've forgotten her name. Forgotten the
Hunger
name of
Games.
Hunger
Hunger
Games.
Games. Yeah.
That dystopia was obvious to everyone that wasn't in the capital city.
Oh
And
yeah.
probably
Right.
was obvious to the people in the capital city as well. That
Oh,
one
the
was in
pores.
your face.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Brett
Brett
makes a
says,
really good point.
yeah, all dystopia is based on the era it springs from.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Wow,
Yeah.
I wonder what an ancient Greek dystopia would have been like.
Sparta.
I'm pretty sure the Spartans would not agree.
Well, I think the Athenians would.
You're probably right about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like there's always like a cycle of when post-apocalyptic fiction or media gets really popular. And
And then it gets moved to current events.
yeah. Then we go, wait, no.
Euripides. Why are you saying Euripides?
Yeah.
Certain
Although,
women
come to think of
convert
it, yeah. Well, actually, that reminds me. If you want a Greek version, a Greek-inspired version of Dystopia, um, Hades Town it's a very it started based it's started as a concept album and then morphed into a really 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 good Broadway musical. But it looks at the Hades and Persephone relationship, and then it also puts the Orpheus and Eurydice dynamic there as well.
Hmm.
But it sets it in a kind of a 1930s railroad version of hell, and then it's how do you get out of that is dystopia.
Man says, what does it say about right now that we have so many options for dystopias available to us?
It's like going to a mall. Choose your dystopia.
I can't remember which Dresden book it is. I think it's the first one where he's talking to somebody and they're asking him about ghosts and this, that, and the other. And he talks about how, in fiction at least, in entertainment, that after 9/11, people flocked to fantasy and science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely flocked to it. No matter what it was,
Mm-hmm.
they flocked to it because they needed some massive escape from what was going on. And that bump hasn't really gone away since.
No, that's I've had this discussion with Misty a couple times about projects, and it was like the reason for why we started writing the two projects that we did, to write something that wasn't so full of angst and horrible, like kids against the world with superheroes. Like, no, we want to write something light and happy and, Scooby-Doo-esque. Monsters of the week. It was Mr. Jenkins, really, not, some summoned existence from hell.
I always like it when they think it's Mr. Jenkins and it is the summoned presence from hell.
That could be true too. One of the old Star Trek books that I read or it may have been connected. It may have been the novelization of the comic strip, the TV comics for Star Trek. They chance across a planet that everybody on the planet is inside virtual reality machines, and their bodies are being maintained by these devices. But when they scratch the surface and dig into it, the entire simulation has crashed. It's gone. It's dead. And these people are just living in never-ending, horrible pain and being kept alive to experience it for forever, almost. And one wonders if, was it a minor change? Did it all break at once? Did things just slowly slide?
Oh, yeah, slowly slide. So the world starts getting weirder and weirder and weirder and more horrible. I think the idea why dystopias are popular is they're an easy canvas for a writer to make a point or tackle a subject. And the reason why they're beloved by readers and watchers and whatever, consumers of media, I guess I should put that, is because it's another way for them to escape
Mm-hmm.
and say, well, as bad as things are, they could be like this.
Yeah.
And I think that's from the fiction, regardless of what the author intended, it's a matter of how the reader sees it, how the reader is affected by it, as to whether it's actually a dystopia or if it's just, the rules don't make sense. For dystopia, the culture and the laws still have to make sense, at least to the people involved.
Could you write a story that is both a dystopia and a utopia, simply depending on the reader?
Yes.
Without changing one single word of text?
Yep.
You'd have to have a really hard limit on that, where that
Such
distinction
as?
is. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with an idea of what this is. Okay, what this might be in today's world. Yeah, completely based on the POV of the character. My first thought was, if I was going to do something like that, I would do it from two different characters' points of view, and then have them somehow come together, either in as antagonists to one another or as shared protagonists. So I'm trying to figure out what something like that would be in the real world with one viewpoint, and I'm just not doing it.
With no,
it would be
wouldn't
challenging.
Be one it wouldn't. I mean, like you said, you'd have to switch between character viewpoints. You'd have to have like alternating chapters and whatnot. But
you could write a story glorifying something like the Third Reich. Write a story of the Third Reich with somebody portraying it in whatever ways. It will, for the vast majority of people nowadays, be a dystopia. But you would undoubtedly find some people out there that would not quite share that view.
Yeah, but you're trying to make that more universal than anything else, and I think maybe that's where my problem is. It's easy to write. It's easy to write something where some people would find it abhorrent, and other people would go, "Well, I wish it was this way." That's a pretty wide gulf, because you're usually talking about a certain extreme. Otherwise, it's just pedestrian.
You could write something as simple as like your Mad Men-esque business, where you have a bulletproof glass ceiling, and there are plenty of, well, of course you should keep that you should not have, essentially you'd have a gender rules split, extreme gender rules split. That would be the easiest way to do it. I
would consider that to be a dystopia.
Yeah. Having worked in one, yes, it absolutely is. And it's, yeah. Actually, I had a nightmare once that I was promoted to like an executive secretary bit, and it was one of the most horrible nightmares ever. So, tells you what my dystopia is. But it's interesting. Like, so you have your post-apocalyptic dystopias. You have your loss of autonomy dystopias, which don't necessarily need a big change, like Fahrenheit 451. That's not a post-apocalyptic.
No, but it might as well be.
Right, but there's an extreme loss of autonomy in terms of what people are allowed to read and share and think. And there is a force within the state that, holds the line.
Combats misinformation.
Make sure that people toe exactly what they want them to toe.
And I say that word specifically not to take a side one way or the other, but to say that elements of dystopia can bleed into our society in unexpected ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Rick, for this comment, no, I wouldn't, because I'd come up and take the I'd take the job I'm assisting if it's not done properly. That's the problem. Yeah. Anyway, it's been that kind of week. Yeah. It's been that kind of week. I was trying to think of other present dystopias. There's always Mad Max. And you've got, so again, post-apocalyptic, loss of resources that help to establish a hierarchy. For folks who are watching Fallout, hi, Julius.
Sorry.
Poor boy. This poor boy. Oh,
you were saying about Fallout?
Right. So Fallout obviously is and actually, so I'm not talking about, I'm sorry. For those who are just listening, Julius has managed to half roll himself on Terry so that he was on his back. And I think he did that quick flail of, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall. No, wait, let me just roll. Yeah.
I want you to know something, Terry. I was listening to Illicit Futures, the episode from last week, and there was a point where that cat got on the mic and it shook the speakers in my car.
Hims is mighty.
Dystopia does not have to be post-apocalyptic. That is correct. But I think most post-apocalyptic societies are dystopic.
Yes. But so I have not, I think I tried to play Fallout at one point, but just time and resources and what have you. But watching the first, I think I'm maybe 5 episodes in for the series, and it's a good example, at least starting out, where one of the protagonists doesn't realize their bunker that they're living in is not a dystopia to them. It is a utopia of a sort. It's very organized and regimented and what have you, but they don't see anything wrong until something horrible happens.
I would say that if the people inside that environment are getting exactly what they wanted and they're not dissatisfied with it, it's not truly a dystopia. Even if it's so
that's what I'm saying.
Strange that we can't understand it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's a utopia to them until the blood and viscera hit the fan.
Yeah.
And then there's a problem.
Antoine says BioShock is a good dystopia, non-post-apocalyptic example. I'll take one issue with that, which is, what is the place called? I can't remember where BioShock takes place. One of y'all gaming geeks is going to have to remind me. That place experienced the apocalypse by the time that you get in there, at least in the first one. That place has already experienced its own apocalypse of a sort. The culture and society have completely broken down. And Rapture, that's right, Rapture. So I would say that in a way that it was dystopic before it broke down in that particular case. And it just gets even more dystopic once it breaks down. But I love that example. Matt says, are there any positive post-apocalyptic stories?
I don't know, because usually the climax and finale of stories set in that post-apocalypse is the survival or succeeding somehow in spite of the society. So I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Tim says, ironically, Matt answered his own earlier question. A positive post-apocalypse would be what's depicted at the end of the Christian Bible.
the
For
Book
the
of
Christians,
Revelation,
perhaps.
yeah, the Book of Revelation is not a happy, positive thing. I
No.
mean, yeah, saying sidebar, fun fact. When I was in parochial school, I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through 8th grade. It explains a lot, doesn't it? Um, we were the different classes were always responsible for doing the Ash Wednesday liturgies, um, for the Friday masses for, well, at that point the Wednesday masses for school. And because I could read and I could speed read, somehow I always got the first reading for all the masses. And if you're not familiar with Catholic liturgies, they're 3 cycles. So I wound up actually doing the first reading for 3 years straight. So I've had to read and study the first reading for all 3 cycles. They're all equally disturbing. For a 7-year-old to go through and read. So 7, 8, 9 years old, it's like, oh, I totally get this. Holy crap, we're all screwed. um, but yeah, it's. Mm.
Antoine says he read a book called The Reapers Are the Angels, and it may meet the requirements. It's by Joshua Gaylord. Okay.
Okay.
Evangelion has semi-positive apocalypses. I would say Ghost in the Shell does too. They had an apocalypse of a sort.
Well,
They had nuclear
because
war.
Tom said that, I should throw up the next comment here, just because one of the other listeners, Tim, does not agree.
The last certainly is a good point. Okay. Now that you two know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But Ghost in the Shell is a good one. Japan is in a post-apocalypse, and the dystopic part is that world where humans and machines have gotten so interconnected that in some cases it's impossible to tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
When does a human amass so much technology in their personal body that they are no longer human anymore? And that series really plays with that idea, and I love it. Non-nuclear World War IV was not an apocalypse, Paul. Yeah, non-nuclear World War IV.
Okay.
Who knows what Tim means?
I know exactly what he means. World War
It's,
III was nukes, and World War IV, everybody went, that was a bad idea. Let's do it. Let's do it with robots.
oh, good. Gundam fight.
Gangnam Style. Wrong
Gundam
thing.
style.
I know. I'm just being rude.
Wrong country. I mean,
Wow. Wow. I got so little.
You got nothing?
I got
You got
beyond
nothing.
nothing. I got the true
Yeah.
meaning of zero there. Anyway, I think if you go through a lot of the anime plays with this, just where you've got dystopias that are not necessarily what you would think of traditionally as post-apocalyptic. And I think that there's a lot of there also is a ton of post-apocalyptic fiction that's always been in Japan since World War II.
Yeah.
I think we can all understand why. But that is I in some ways I think they started the post-apocalypse tradition, at least to set it on the route that it is now.
I think some of it, yeah, and at least there's definitely a certain style that comes along with that. But I think also not just them, but with the whole mythos is not the right word. The whole culture around the Cold War and the what ifs of what could happen. I think that's probably a really good starting place for a lot of your Western centric.
Yes, and but way back when it was all about communism.
Mm-hmm. Right. And yeah, because I think that's the majority of what I read and what I was familiar with. Because generally the dystopia that comes up is a conformity and strict adherence to groupthink. and a totalitarian regime.
I think I'm going to go ahead and say something that's heretical. Because this is Star Wars Day, I'm going to drag it back to Star
Oh
Wars,
no.
and of
Oh
course
no.
it's
Oh no.
opposite Star Trek, and I am going to say that Star Trek is more dystopian than Star Wars as the general universe. I think the first, the what is it called, the Prime Directive, is the most dystopian rule to cause death and destruction and mayhem throughout the universe as the elites stand by and do nothing while everyone else suffers while they stand on a moral high ground. Whereas the even though they've got the Empire in the Star Wars universe, it's kind of a remote threat, and it's more like dealing with our own federal government, if it's wearing some jackboots on occasion. That's my heresy.
Interesting. Interesting. I
Yeah,
thought I
I
thought you were going to say Star Trek TNG, for instance, is a utopia.
For the people that
no
have the stuff, maybe. Not for everybody else.
For the people in the federal, at least the humans on Earth.
For the haves, it is. For the
where
have-nots, it is not.
crap. What? No, The Expanse. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh God.
The Expanse. That was a really good breakdown of where you could have, where you had like pockets of utopia within a wall, and then outside dystopic, and then how are you managing that? But yeah, Tim, I agree as well. At least with, I think some of the later iterations of Star
DS9
Trek.
showed the underbelly.
Yeah, DS9, I was thinking, showed the underbelly. And I think Voyager, with just how disconnected they were with the setting, Janeway was happy to violate the Prime Directive because I think there was a lot more compassion, empathy, and what are they going to do to us? It's not like they can find us right now.
Since you
And
brought up Star Wars,
yeah,
let me throw this at you. I argue that when the Jedi were rulers, it was dystopic.
I
oh,
can agree with
absolutely,
that sentiment. Yeah.
yeah, because you still had a regimented society based on a have and a have not.
And you had a group of people who could do whatever the fuck they wanted, whenever the fuck they wanted.
Now, admittedly, the Old Republic did allow the representation of the people, so they did have the freedom of electing their own voices in whatever they were. It was a dirty society, but it was not quite as dirty as perhaps the sheer separation between the haves and have-nots that Star Trek has.
Okay. I haven't
Mhm.
watched all the series. I mean, I only watched some of TNG and the original series, so I don't know about these other properties and what happened in them. So
I
that's my
think,
ignorance.
yeah, and I think the closest that it gets to not being, to not having the dystopia that you described, Terry. Um, I have a cat in my office. Look at that. I had a
Drink,
cat.
drink.
Um, would be, like I said, Voyager. I think Strange New Worlds is, I don't know.
It's
I think it's
interesting in
close. It's
Strange New
closer.
Worlds, they implemented the Prime Directive
Hmm.
during Strange New Worlds. So
Yeah.
it's new days on the Prime Directive. I
Hmm.
haven't watched. I think I'm at least half a season. I didn't finish half the season because I got
Hmm.
distracted of last year. I don't even know if they've started a new season already. So I'm still
They
way
haven't.
behind, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen all the things they've done. I may go back and start watching it at the beginning just to catch up.
There's
It's a great show. I love it.
it's really good, and I greatly appreciate the takes on characters who, like, characters who are canon, and then bringing stuff in and tying it together. And I'm one of those people who really likes Discovery, but that's because I really like the actors who are in it. And I think in some of the storylines that have come through, there has really been the attempt to the attempt to kind of rectify that, but we don't have to stick to the prime directive. We have to do something to help people and not just idly stand by. That's really, really evident in Strange New Worlds. But at the same time, it's because circumstances. I'm trying to figure out how to explain without spoilers. Possible spoilers. So
Plug your
just
ears, everybody.
hang on. Plug your ears if you. I'm trying not to give too much away, even though it's like a couple seasons through. Due to circumstances that involve a time shift, you wind up hitting another group in the far future that the current crew is butting heads with. And it is still very much of the trying to resolve a dystopia. And adhering to the old rules of the Federation, not realizing that that could be a problem. But
Rick says there's a whole segment of the Star Wars fandom that labeled the Empire as the good guys and the Jedi as the bad guys.
oh yeah,
You could easily tell the story of Star Wars from a different perspective and all the same events and probably twist it around so that it seems the other way around with the good guys and the bad guys.
There was a game called TIE Fighter. Some of you nerds might remember. And it was the whole beginning of it anyway was you were a TIE Fighter pilot. And so the propaganda was so interesting, rebel scum, the whole 9 yards. And it was a really interesting flip. And they did it really, really well. I never played the whole game, never got a chance, but it was really interesting. It just takes a different viewpoint and you can skew anything. And explain it from that. I mean, the rebels are terrorists. Plain and simple.
The destruction of Tatooine, or not Tatooine. Which one got blown up? I lost it. Alderaan. The destruction of Alderaan, that would be hard to justify. But most of the rest of the movie, you could probably justify somewhat.
Yeah, you say that. Star Wars toward the Outer Rim, ungoverned systems was quite dystopian. And y'all brought up the idea of Tatooine. And yeah, it's the idea of organized crime basically taking over those areas. And I would say that in the Expanse, that's the belt.
Yep.
That's the belt. You've got basically chaos and anarchy being reined in by gangs and some group who's trying to make it into something real as opposed to just being gangs. We can argue all day long about who's actually trying to get power over that whole thing and what their aims are. But the bottom line is that's what's happening in that series.
All you need to do is soften the Imperials a little bit in viewpoint, and I can go ahead and do that for you. In Star Wars the movie, Grand Moff Tarkin, he's like the uber guy there. He's the villain other than Darth Vader. But all you have to know is the actor that played that role did not wear boots unless he actually had his feet in the scene. He went around dressed in the uniform with slippers on. So keep that in mind.
Fuzzy bunny slippers.
I don't know about the fuzzy bunny part. That would be really funny.
That would be hilarious. Oh my, yeah, that would be awesome.
Or even just like
abandoned ship during our moment of triumph. Excuse me, I have to adjust my bunny slipper.
Mr. Fluffles and Mr. Snuffles disagree.
There's only one problem. We go out to march. I end up kicking my bunnies off. I can see that completely. I
didn't hear you come up behind me. Well, that's the point.
I think dystopias are pretty easy to write. I think they're pretty easy to write. Because it's very easy to find a thread in today's society or culture and see something and just start pulling and then see what that unravels. The only question you have to answer is how far are you willing to take it? And then in my mind, if you're going to do that, you have to give us some idea of the dominoes that fell. And what the at least by context, what the ramifications were of those things happening. So that would be my personal piece of advice regarding dystopias.
You have to be your own conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You as the writer are the conspiracy theorist putting together the pieces of how the society changed. And then because of that, this is happening. Because of that, this is happening. And Terry's got a smirk on his face.
I
Yep.
do. I'm remembering a horror movie, Paul, that I haven't actually seen it. I've just heard about it. It's the one where John Goodman has a bunker.
Oh,
Oh, Cloverfield.
What was it?
Cloverfield.
yeah,
Cloverfield.
Cloverfield.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen it, but
It's messed up.
the fact that the girl is trying to escape and she's got to kill people and get out of there and whatnot, and then gets out and finds out it's real.
Right.
They're down in there because it's real. And so the situation she thought of as being her own dystopia was actually significantly worse once she got out.
Oh, I mean, look at Logan's Run. They come out of their utopia and it's find out it's a dystopia, but what are they left with? A post-apocalyptic wasteland. So it's also that kind of flip, right? You're beginning to see that why things are the way they are, and that puts a different light on it. 10
This
Cloverfield Lane,
dystopia
yeah.
is for your own good.
It's interesting that story did it by perspective, by limiting the character's perspective to what they were seeing. You thought you were getting one kind of story where you were getting another.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good sleight of hand, but it makes sense. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan has made an entire career out of doing that to a certain degree.
Is he still making movies?
He is.
Maybe I should have asked if he's made any good movies.
Split and Glass.
Okay, maybe that'll count. Very
Split
few,
is
though.
excellent. Glass is awesome.
The ones I've seen of his, I've been less than impressed by.
Unbreakable, I would say you got to watch the comic book trilogy. It's Unbreakable, Split, and Glass.
Mm.
And I think they're all worth it, and they're all kind of shocking in their own ways. Glass is just masterful, though. I mean, watching the dominoes fall. I love that movie. Anyway, that notwithstanding, it's an interesting concept to put in your books. Do you write anything dystopic in your societies, Terry?
I wrote a post-apocalyptic story, which obviously had some serious despotic elements, dystopian elements developing inside of it. The new series that I'm going to write, I've decided to do bad things to human beings as a species. When you've got millions upon millions of humans ending up in a place where they can be taken advantage of, they can end up in slums and bad things can happen to them.
Right.
So I've decided to implement things like that. So look for things like slavery being something that the hero has to deal with. That's not something he can control.
I'd argue that the culture and society of the Derelict saga, the way things are, and the fact that they've let the machines take over so much of automation before the fall, was dystopic, and after the fall, even more so. So I did not think of it that way when I wrote it, but looking back on it, it most definitely is. But I didn't punctuate that as a element until much later in the series. So I think that we all do it to a certain extent. It's just a question of whether we're doing it intentionally or if it's just part of the society that we're writing about.
I know that I had dystopic elements in the Humanity Unlimited series, but I didn't intentionally set out to do an actual full-blown dystopia, and I'm still not.
Right.
Having aliens take advantage of, itinerant species, that's different. That's going to be a somewhat dystopic thing. And so they are going to end up being a villain with space Nazis.
On that note,
you've written it.
on that note,
What did you say to me?
Huh?
You said something, but Paul said it over you, and I wanted to actually hear what it was.
I said with, don't knock writing space Nazis till you've tried it.
Okay. Sorry, Paul. I had to hear what she said.
If you have a comment or question about this show, you can send an email to show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find me on Mastodon at Paul_E_Cooley at VYRSE.social. You can find us on Facebook at the Dead Robot Society writing community, where all three of us mingle the madness. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast, where we are live almost every Saturday at 3 p.m. CST. Like and subscribe so you know when we're live. And if you want to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/DRS podcast and buymeacoffee.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, go check Buy Me a Coffee, folk. You can get access to exclusive live shows like the one we are doing in about 10 minutes.
With Space Nazis.
And at the $10 level, you get your name read. And our $10 patrons are Nate Cosby, Antoine Batts, Tony L. Joy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Isabel Cushy, and Tim Niederreiter. Thank you to all of our patrons for making the show possible and keeping us on the air. And with that, I think we should probably get out of here.
I think so.
Yeah. So y'all go write your dystopic novel. And if you haven't read Brave New World and Anthem and some of these other books, you probably should give them a shot at some point. There's a reason why they're classics. Mm-hmm. Or go listen to Russia's 2112 with the lyric sheet.
Go read Nora Roberts' Year One.
That we are out of here. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.